Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFurio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm really excited to have you along today for one of our recorded on the trade show floor series, the live series from Coffee Fest. We do these every show, every Coffee Fest. We talk with people from the pool of experts that are presenting their lectures and their panel discussions and things like that, and then present them to you. And today we've got two really cool interviews that we were able to capture. Except here's the thing. My equipment during this recording broke. And so it's not really technically live, although both of these people are people that I was really honored to meet during the show. But my equipment, after many, many years of lugging it around the country and recording, decided that it was going to go on a permanent vacation. And so we had to catch up with these folks at a different time, which actually was beneficial for you because you could actually watch us on YouTube because we recorded our interview, our video interview. So if you're on YouTube and you wanted to also watch me talking with Fredrick Dubose and Jaime Becker-Finn, then you can do so by just going to Keys to the Shop on YouTube. So anyway, today we're going to be featuring both of those interviews with these two great entrepreneurs that I was able to both get to know a little bit about during the show, and then afterwards have these interviews, which are going to show you back to back. Now, before we start that, though, I do want to draw attention to the obvious fact that this happened at Coffee Fest. And of course, I have been going to Coffee Fest as a presenter, as a participant and contributor for the last 20 years. And I love this trade show. It is super accessible, free, and accessibly priced trainings and workshops and lectures. And of course, the community that you get to be a part of during the show, you're going to walk away with new friends, new networks, a lot more of a richer perspective of the industry, and practical insights to get to operate a better coffee shop. So if you go to coffeefest.com, check out the upcoming shows for 2025. I believe the order is New York, Portland, LA, Orlando. And those 4 shows are going to be great. I'll be at all 4 of them. We'll have a booth at the show this year, so definitely stay tuned for when I advertise where the booth is going to be. But Coffee Fest is just such a great asset to the industry, and it would be a wise move to participate in at least one of those 4 shows coming up in 2025. So check them out over at coffeefest.com. Okay, so today, like I said, we're going to talk to 2 entrepreneurs that were presenting during the show, starting with Jaime Becker-Finn. Jaime Becker-Finn is the founder and owner of Makwa Coffee, which is a community-centered craft coffee shop that opened in Roseville, Minnesota in 2022. Jaime is a descendant of the Leech Lake band of Ojibwe and named the shop after her clan, Makwa, which is the Ojibwe word for black bear. In a sea of suburban chain stores where she's opened this store, Makwa Coffee is proud to be a unique and values-driven space where queer folks, Native folks, and the entire community is welcome. In addition to running this shop, Jaime is actually an attorney and is also wrapping up 8 years of service in the Minnesota House of Representatives, where she has chaired the House Judiciary Committee. So Jaime grew up on the res near Cass Lake and goes home often. This conversation with Jaime that we're going to start with today is really fantastic. It's one, because we get to learn about the founding and the story of Makwa Coffee, but 2, because we also get to talk a little bit about how Jaime, the presentation that she did, at least one of them during this time, which was on unique ways to perceive merchandise and retailing in the coffee industry. And I think Jaime's perspective on what it means to have good merch in your store is something that really balances the equation when we're really stressing about getting the right hats and t-shirts and tote bags and cups and mugs and stuff. There is something deeper to what's going on when we're offering merch, and that's something that I love about the way Jaime thinks about how these things inspire connection. And again, so this was a great conversation. Following Jaime's interview, you're going to find out where you can find more information about Makwa Coffee. So stay tuned to that. And then we're going to jump into our interview with Fredrick Dubose of Sunbeam Coffee. And so let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with the founder of Makwa Coffee, Jaime Becker-Finn. All right, Jaime, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How's it going today?
It's good. It's good to be with you.
How was your Coffee Fest experience?
It was great. This was my first coffee fest. I have a relatively newer shop. We've been open just a couple years, and
Mhm.
definitely left with a lot of ideas, and was good networking with folks too.
So before you open your shop, you spoke a couple of times at the show actually, and I want to talk about that here in a second. But take us back to the getting into coffee thing. How did that happen, and what inspired you to start your shop?
Yeah, so actually we were just coming out of COVID, with, when people started to get vaccinated, and kind of we were starting to maybe get back out into our communities more. And I realized that the thing I missed the most during COVID was actually going to my local neighborhood bar. And it wasn't because I missed drinking, it was because I missed the community there. And so
Mm,
really realized that in my community, I'm in a suburb, there really was nothing to walk to, no sort of business that was really community based. It was all, we have every chain restaurant you could think of. We have a pretty notable mall in Roseville, Minnesota, and realizing that we didn't have anything that was truly of our community, kind of by us, for us kind of situation.
and so you just wanted to open it yourself, and you did it.
Yeah, I threw it up on my personal social media, and people, I was like, "Hey, if there was a coffee shop like in this neighborhood, what would y'all think about that?" And people were super supportive. And then the way I always explain it, it's like the universe just kept sending me signs to keep going. I connected with a great local roaster that did. They actually paid for me to do some SCA training that I probably would not have invested in or even found.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they were super supportive, and just really great people that helped me survive the first couple of years for sure.
So what was your background in business prior to opening a coffee business?
Yeah, so my background's actually mostly in politics and community organizing, public policy work. But where I grew up in my small town, my dad and my uncle owned the two convenience stores in town. So I was very familiar with sort of being in charge of your own schedule, but also, working on Christmas Day, and sort of the hustle, and even as a teenager, when I'd stop into the store, my dad would be like, "We go fill up the pop cooler, and I'll pay for your gas."
Yeah.
So that was sort of the culture I was raised in a really small town. So I was very used to sort of the gas station convenience store being the clearinghouse for everything that was happening in our town.
So between politics, community organizing, entrepreneurship, and being part of the, team of people in your family that kept it all going, it must have felt relatively familiar to you to operate even though the technically the coffee part of it is unique. Did it feel like you were kind of stepping into something that you've already experienced?
There were way more commonalities, I think, especially with running a shop. Even though the learning the coffee techniques was new to me, I'd certainly had consumed a lot of coffee over the years and spent a lot of time working out of coffee shops over the years. But I think,
Hmm.
especially now, the amount of time I spend on social media and, building relationships with folks in our community, like all of that is very similar. And I think also just the commitment to service and kindness, a lot of those skills actually overlap. I realized too when I spoke at Coffee Fest, I was not nervous because I've done public speaking in my roles in politics. So there's definitely a lot of skills that overlap and have been helpful as a coffee shop owner.
That's great. Yeah. And so you mentioned that you kind of pulled the community, one that you were very familiar with because you're from there. What did people say to you about what they wanted in a coffee shop? How did that kind of shape what you ended up building?
Yeah, so I did a lot of kind of crowdsourcing and sort of just posing the question. I was pretty well connected. So first of all, my business is located in the community where I live, where my kids go to school, where I've worked on campaigns, so people were already sort of familiar with me. So I already had kind of a bigger number of people within my social media circles. So I would just kind of pose things like, hey, what do you wish you could do in a community space? What kind of things do you enjoy? And then I would post things like, hey, if we had a book club that focused on native authors, like how many of you would be into that? And I
Hmm.
would just get, people were really engaged with those kinds of questions. And so um, we kind of went from there, kind of took what people told us they wanted. And that's the thing that's great about being a micro business is it's like if I think it's okay and I'm the owner, we can try to pull it off. So that's really been I think a key to our success. We're 2 years in and I already am at a place where I'm not like losing sleep over every night about the shop. So that's
Okay.
been really cool.
But initially, I mean, it's pretty, there's a lot of pressure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I was using, and like startup is real too. And it's incredibly hard to get startup capital if you're not independently wealthy and you don't have sort of, I didn't have a business that I could point to. Oh, here's my other like successful business. Give me a
Yeah.
loan. And I was, fortunate and unfortunate in some ways, but because of a death of a family member, my family had some funds available, and so we were able to use some of those funds at the beginning. So there definitely was a lot of pressure to do right by, the friends and family who had invested in one way or another in our success.
Yeah. And when you are now 2 years in, what has come to be sort of the hallmark of your business? And how have your plans for what you are going to serve and the culture and atmosphere and what you want to platform and everything else, right? How has that come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of like, you put yourself out there and you try to do things in a good way. And my philosophy has always been that we can respect everybody that comes in the door. And the example I always give is when I was younger. I'm over 40 now, so I don't care so much about what other people think. But when I was younger, so, yeah, we've all had that experience of walking into a coffee shop and like the person behind the counter kind of like rolling their eyes, like now they got to do some work, and then like feeling deeply uncool because I ordered something a certain way, or just that judgment that can come from shops. And so I have always like my goal has been that we're the opposite of that.
Yeah.
However you want your coffee, um, like who am I to tell you what tastes good to you? Like that's a really weird thing that we do where we tell people what should taste good to them. It's sort of like you would never make some fun of somebody's laugh because it's just like internal to who they are and unique to
Yeah.
them. And so that's really been our philosophy. I think for me too, like as a queer person, I don't see the world in kind of strict binaries. So that's been a very like that worldview. And then my worldview as a Native person has also been very helpful in sort of not seeing the world in like a straight capitalism, transactional way has been super helpful. So like
Yeah.
the main thing that's been really cool about our shop is the support from the local Native community, and the support from the local queer community. We don't have a lot of businesses in our suburb that are sort of openly like, this is a safe space for
Hmm.
everybody. And so we've really led with that and led with our values, and the community's been there to back us up, every step of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of integrity to your cause in the operations and how you just fulfill those promises. And you said there's a lot at stake, and I like that because there is a certain urgency and stewardship that comes with what we decide to take on. Because a lot of people do open a coffee shop, and it's pretty frivolous in a lot of ways, and it comes out, it comes out in the coffee or the service and all that. So great. Now it kind of rolls into a little bit of what you were talking about in one of your talks, like you were talking about merchandise. And there's a lot of nuance to this because at first there's a straight line. Yeah, merchandise is specifically for making money. And that's what we do, right? However, I know because before we recorded and we talked on the show floor, what your take on it is a little unique for how we approach merch and the whole idea of expanding the brand beyond the transaction or even the experience. So I wonder if you could kind of encapsulate what that different take is.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I think, I was raised to really always see things in relation to one another. So like in my home community on the reservation where I grew up, the first thing that a lot of Native folks do when they meet each other is you say where you're from and who you're
Mm,
related to. We're always like trying to figure out the place where like somebody's cousin knows somebody or like went to school with somebody, and we're always in relation with each other. And so I see our merchandise options, every merch item that we offer is an opportunity to build a relationship with a new person or with a
mm,
new organization. And what that means is that, for instance, we do my favorite item that I talked about at the show was we have these coffee bags. It's just a tote bag, but it's made out of the burlap from the sacks that the beans come in, from all over the world. And
yeah.
there's a local nonprofit that they take youth who are unhoused and they teach them skills like how to use like big machines to sew and to make things like birdhouses and tote bags. And then they do all the work. But we sell them out of our shop, and other local coffee shops in the Twin Cities area sell them as well. So it's very, then they talk about us and we talk about Elpis in St. Paul. And so, then the people who support their nonprofit are like, oh, we're going to check out this coffee shop because we're aligned in values with them, and kind of vice versa. And so I find that those kind of ways of building a customer base, like, yes, at the end of the day, I got to pay the bills. But building a
Mhm.
customer base like that is much more sustainable than solely seeing it as like transactions that build on top of each other. I see it more as like threads that are interwoven in a much stronger way. It also means that if we have like a bad day, like my fun thing this week was for the first time our espresso machine stopped working, and we did not have espresso for an entire day.
No.
Yeah, like every shop owner's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
It's back up and working now, but we found that most people were like, they know us and they care about us. They know my staff. They were, okay, no problem. I'll get cold brew today, or I'll get drip. That's fine. Obviously we lost some business, but it means when things kind of go sideways that people are in relationship and care with each other. And so they're kind of less likely to be like, I'm going to go give you a bad Google review because one day I came in here and you were having equipment problems. Like that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not how it's going to work when you're have built that with other people.
That's really interesting. And I'm sorry, that sucks. But what a great opportunity to witness the goodwill that you've cultivated through your dedication to that relationship building approach. And it was this, it's funny because I've been told, my wife has told me that I'm hard to buy for when it comes to like Christmas presents or something. I'm just like always looking for something. And, I'm struck by the idea that people who want to support you have to have avenues through which to support you, whether it's buying a drink or a bag or the bag of coffee itself. It seems like merchandise is not just a thing that you do because that's what coffee shops do. Maybe it does cultivate that opportunity for relational expression from the customer to you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think, like another cool story is, so our logo, I paid a native artist who's based in Minnesota, Sarah House, to make our logo, so that, one, we were like paying it back, but also having a logo that's like cool and unique to us that we really care about. And so, it's also like, what does that do for my staff when they see people in the community wearing our merch? It's like right away you kind of like your heart feels that. And then like another example is we did a book club on a book by, we do a native author book club every other month, that's just facilitated by a couple of book nerds in our community who are customers of the shop. And the author, we tagged the author on Instagram, and he ended up buying several shirts from me and was like super supportive, and thought it was super cool that this native shop was featuring his book. So my goal is to someday be in an airport far away from Minnesota and like see a random person with our stuff on it. But yeah, I think it's that part, and then also always, being mindful of the impact on my team and not just me. I think that was the other thing we talked about in the panel is like, you can't just like throw some merch items out there because you got some cool email from some business. Like, you got to think through how your staff's going to sell all that and how they're going to feel about selling whatever that item is.
Oh man, the fly in the ointment is definitely the execution of a good idea, and if it's not done well with respect to those who are responsible for it, yeah, no one's going to want to upsell it. First of all, it's a little insulting, right? So, I I think the question is then, if we wanted to take a page from Jamie's playbook and engage in our merchandise in a way that's a little less um, knee jerk to, this is hot right now, I'm just going to throw that in the shop, with something that's a little more of a relational bent to it, that's more authentic to the space in the place. What would you advise an owner do in the next couple of months, as we know that retail is just going to keep getting more busy toward the holidays? What are some practical steps?
Yeah, I think, mining the relationships that you already have. We've actually had really good experience with posting things on social media saying, hey, we're looking for an artist who does this kind of work. Like, who's out there that might be interested? And then you find out, like, oh, there's this person that's been following your shop and like never says anything. Or, one of your regulars is actually also a graphic designer on the side. I think, and then sharing that story. I think that's the other important part, is that I'm at heart, I'm a writer. And so, sharing those stories and why we do what we do, is the second piece of it. I could do all this cool stuff, but if I don't share with my community in, a way that hits enough people, they're not going to know. And so I think, being mindful of that piece of it too, of communicating, hey, you might have noticed we have this like new item in the shop. Wanted to share you the cool story of why we carry this and like whose hands made this art. Things like that I think are super important. And honestly, sometimes it's just like, whenever I get an email, and I assume this happens to other business owners, but like, there's always somebody like trying to get me to like buy hats from them, or
Yeah.
whatever merch item it is. I go look them up, like, where are they from? Are they from my community? They'll often write those emails as if they're like, oh, local small biz, hey Jamie. And it's like, okay, you Googled me, fine. But I'll go look up, if you're getting something printed, go see if there's somebody local that could do it for you. And then I bet you, that small business, they're going to start coming into you. They might start ordering coffee from you when they have events. There's just always, there are infinite opportunities to connect with people that aren't straight like standing outside of Starbucks and pointing people to your business instead. I just think there's always an opportunity to grow and meet new people, and kind of like, yes, you're pointing things in the right direction, but also kind of allowing things to sort of percolate as they
Yeah.
will, and really feeding and tending to those relationships as you go.
That's interesting. Allowing things to percolate, to be, not give you the ROI that you may want right away. Well, like you said, that you have to obviously price things. You have to know your customer base to know that they may or may not want to pay an X number of dollars for something. So there's some regular retail practical things that have to happen. So even as a service to the person that you're going to reach out to and work with, if you didn't do that stuff, I suppose it's not fair to the artist to have a showing of their stuff that's inaccessible to the community.
Right. Well, like, I just had this really cool person. They make like really cool things with a 3D printer, and I
Uh-huh.
don't have a feasible way to sell some little trinkety item in my very small shop. So, I mean, the other thing we do is make this use of the space the best we can, and so we do like a pop-up artist every Sunday from 10 to 2, and those come from our customer base, but also like word of mouth. People are like, oh, the like people in this neighborhood are super supportive. I sold a lot of my stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm getting other artists and people reaching out with their cool stuff, who want an opportunity to use our space. But then again, like each one of those people is a network of people who follow that artist and that maker. And now, like, this is a much more sustainable long-term relationship building for the life of my shop than paying more for Google ads. Like my targeting of actually having the people who are physically in my shop who follow me on Instagram is going to be a more sturdy structure to our customer base than anything I could pay for on an app.
It's all back to those relationships and finding out where people are from, how you can meet them in that relationship. That's great. Jaime, this has been wonderful. And I'm so glad to get on this call and talk about what you talked about at Coffee Fest. I'm sure that this session was well received, and I think you shared some pretty powerful things. So I appreciate you being here. How can we stay in touch with Makwa and Coffee and follow you online on Instagram and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so we're just Makwa Coffee. So Makwa is the Ojibwe word for black bear. That's my clan. I'm Leech Lake Ojibwe. So it's spelled Makwa Coffee. And we're just at Makwa Coffee on Instagram and Facebook. And then quick Google, you'll find us too. So
yeah, come in the store for some cool merch.
yeah, and a good conversation. And however you want to order it, we will make it for you.
Wonderful. Jaime, really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. If you're interested in more information about Makwa Coffee, you want to follow on Instagram, that's at Makwa Coffee. You can go on website as well, muck-wuh-coffee.com. That's spelled Makwa Coffee, muck-wuh-coffee.com, and at Makwa Coffee on Instagram. And a huge thank you to Jaime for joining us on the show and for lending us your insights to entrepreneurship, leadership, and retailing as well. We really appreciate it. All right, so now we're going to go to another interview that I had with somebody who I'm pleased to say is also a listener to the show and is the first coffee shop that I made a beeline towards when I got off the plane to go to Coffee Fest in Minneapolis, which is Sunbeam Coffee, the brainchild of founder Frederick Dubose. And it was great to sit down, have coffee, and then get to chat with him in his cafe and experience what a refreshing environment he's created there. And then to sit down again with him during this interview online to talk about the work that he does at Sunbeam, what led to it, how he's operated the business, and what it means to him and to the community. So a little bit about Frederick. He's had over 20 years of a career of mentoring and supporting young people. And he recognizes that creating, and this is what led to his coffee shop, recognizing that creating a physical space where the community could gather and engage was the next step for his mission to foster connection and growth. And that became Sunbeam Coffee Shop. And so his experience in youth work taught him the value of creating safe and inclusive environments where people can thrive. And so Sunbeam became that space for not only the young people, but for the entire neighborhood where Sunbeam is located. And Frederick just saw an opportunity to continue his mentorship in the shop by hiring local youth, offering them not just employment, but life skills, a sense of responsibility on a platform to contribute to their community. So it's not just it's not just another coffee shop. It's a local institution known for its welcoming atmosphere. It's had a really positive impact. What's also really cool is that just recently, within the last couple of months here, Sunbeam won the award for Best Business Startup of the Year at the Black Business Ball. It was a fantastic award to win and is a testament to the kind of impact that they are making. And of course, you can predict are going to continue to make at Sunbeam. So this interview is going to be a Founder Friday style, talking about Fred's introduction into coffee and transitioning from one career to this career, and to growing or founding this business, in what's gone into creating the impact at this early stage of the business that it's already made. And you're going to find some pretty cool personal ties to this business. And I think all business, no matter who you are starting a coffee shop, is based on some level of personal mission that you have. And the way that Frederick decides to open this and what it means to him personally is obviously one of the main things that makes it such a fulfilling place to be. There's a lot of meaning behind it. And it's not just the taste of the coffee, it's the sense of place and the sense of meaning behind the coffee, behind the paint and the chairs and everything else that makes it really come to life. So anyway, let's get right to it. Here now is my interview with the founder of Sunbeam Coffee Shop, Frederick Dubose. All right, Fred, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How's it going today?
It's going great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Of course. It was such a pleasure to get to go to your cafe. Yeah, actually, your cafe was one of the first ones, was the first one I went to on my way through from the Minneapolis airport to the convention center. What a great oasis in the city. And I think that's by design. It was great, right?
Thank you. Yeah. Sunbeam really is like, we really wanted to be embedded in the community, not just plop ourselves in a neighborhood and start doing business. This is a neighborhood that I'm familiar with. It's a neighborhood that I've lived in. And this is a neighborhood that I really appreciate and love. So being a part of that community, not just doing business in that community, was really important to me. So before we even opened the doors, it was the first thing that we wanted to do, which was like phase one, is like let the community know like who we were, what we're about, and try to establish ourselves as a part of that community, which is they've really accepted us and really embraced Sunbeam, which has been awesome.
That's great to hear. And dialing back a little bit here to how you decided to open this cafe.
Hmm.
Um, from our conversation in your store, I know that this was both a professional and a personal journey for you. Talk to us a little bit about the impetus behind Sunbeam.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been over 20 years that I've been wanting to open up a cafe. Actually, the when I first got like the itch, I was like a freshman in college, and at that time, I wanted to open up a cafe that would embrace the Black community as well, because there wasn't a lot of that going on in Minneapolis, and there
Yeah.
was a coffee shop in Uptown Minneapolis called Cafe Noir, and that was such a long time ago, but it was like amazing to see that happen, and to see that was something that was even possible for me as like a 19-year-old, thinking like, oh, this would be a really cool thing. I really got a lot into youth development, so I spent the majority of my career doing that. But opening a coffee shop never got too far away from my heart and my mind. Um, and as I matured and as I grew professionally and became like an avid coffee drinker, uh, that want for a place that was comforting and a place that was like really accepting and that I felt comfortable in, was something that I still looked for. Uh, like I spoke before, Cafe Noir, they had went out of business. There was nothing that replaced them, nothing that even attempted to replace them.
Hmm.
So there's not a lot of like Black owned or minority owned coffee shops in Minneapolis. I mean, it's very far and few between. Um, Also, a big thing that I started to deal with like later on in life was like anxiety and depression. And what I realized is like going to get a coffee midday when I'm having a hard time, not necessarily just tired, but like maybe I'm just dealing with anxiety. Maybe I'm feeling down. Going to my favorite coffee shop in that area was really comforting to me, really settling to me. And so it really kind of brought back the feeling of like wanting to create a place for people who felt like me, and also people who look like me. And so that
Hmm.
just became like really important for my life, and kind of created a pivot in my life professionally. So yeah, I just decided to push all my chips forward and make that big step.
I mean, it sounds like because that dream of opening a coffee shop was so close to your heart that it benefited from all of the other experiences that you were having in youth development, in just watching the development of the community around you, so that when you did start that coffee shop, it was shaped by your life, shaped by what you experienced that you wanted other people to experience when they walked in. How did you go about planning it so that you would make sure that it did that thing that coffee shops did for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the culmination of all the experiences that I had, like professionally, like youth employment was a huge project, in a lot of my work. And so encouraging youth to go into entrepreneurship, and it felt a little weird that I was encouraging people to do something that I had not done yet. Um, and I have a great job and everything, but I just like there's this unfinished thing for myself. And I had like, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. I had looked in my, and I'm just going to be completely transparent. Like one time I just looked in my medicine cabinet and was like, there's a lot of medications here for me just to do a
Mm,
thing, um,
yeah.
so that just tells me like there's something wrong. I need to redirect. I need to do things that instead of like swimming upstream, I need to find my groove and do the things that make me happy. And if I'm going to suffer in any kind of way, at least it'll be something that I really believe in, something that I really love. And I will never have to like look back and say, oh, I have regrets for not trying to do this thing that just that's always been with me. So yeah, I just jumped in head first, and started connecting with people, talking about what I was trying to do. I left my job, and said like, this is really what's going to drive me, and this is really a passion that I have. And so meeting the right people, and I think when you really try to do something and you do something from your heart, doors open, people come into your life. People try to support you, and and help you, especially if you're doing something that's just really like pure and for good.
I love what you said there about, at least if you're going to do these hard things and come upon these hardships, then it's in the service of something that's meaningful, and it's of value to you, and deeply meaningful to your heart, that
Absolutely.
is going to make you happy, even though there might be hardships with it. No doubt there's hardships that even today running the shop.
I had no idea, but I had no idea. I was never a morning person. Um, I've always been a person who's, I've gotten up, I used to think like getting up at 6:30 was super early.
Oh yeah.
Um, I thought I was like, wow, 6:30, that's crazy. I like to get up at 7 and watch the Today Show and kind of have a slow start to my morning, and then just kind of go into the office or whatever. These days it's like 4:50.
Right.
Um, asleep. Even if there's a day I'm like, oh, okay, this is a designated day that I get to sleep in, my body won't even allow me to sleep past like 6. It's like, oh, you're oversleeping. I'm definitely locked in, but it's the hard times are not as hard when you're doing what you love. It's a challenge. It's a leveling up opportunity. It's an opportunity to overcome something, and it's an opportunity to make your business better, make your life better, and just it's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I
Sure.
totally see that, and I'm living that.
Obviously, this is not an overnight thing, but I'm curious about how you started to see that your decision, risky as it in the moment it might have seemed, um, was the right decision. That it started to show, signs that it was going to be part of the healing process, or part of a larger part of how you got out of some of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. First had left my job. I took like a 6 week, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a hiatus. I went down to the Gulf Shores where I'm from, spent a lot of time at the beach reflecting and saying, like, there needs to be a major change. You know what you want to do, and like, do you have the courage to do it? And so I took that time. Luckily, and I'm married. Tomorrow is my 4 year anniversary. So
Congrats.
I
Yeah.
had to talk to my wife and say, hey, we're going to take a lot of our money and invest in this coffee shop, invest in this dream. Luckily, like when I met her, she knew this is something that I wanted to do because initially, I should back up and just kind of give a little pre-story. I had been working with this with the city and youth development for about 19 years,
Mm.
and I began this process in 2019, wanting to open up Sunbeam. And then 2020 hit, and it was late 2019. 2020 hit, and then we had a setback with COVID. And I'm from Minneapolis, so we also had a setback with the George Floyd situation, which
Yeah.
really, like, literally and figuratively set the city on fire. And in that time, with those things happening, I felt like it wasn't the right time, and I felt like I needed to get back to youth work. Our youth here felt really misplaced, and they needed, between COVID and everything that was going on, they needed structure. They needed help, and that was like my profession. So I did go back to that for a little while.
Yeah.
But initially, it was 2019 where I was like, I'm going to do this thing. But between 2019 and opening Sunbeam, I did get married. I did buy a house. I did have a baby. So I had all these huge responsibilities. And it felt like it was pushing me further and further away from my dream. Even having these successes that I was having in my life, it felt like it was pushing me further from my dream. So getting back to when we opened in 2023, or so this is like 2022, where we're really doing the work in the to get ourselves established.
Yeah.
It just took a lot of help from family. It took a lot of support. It took building a community, and to be honest, even like people close to me were like, are you sure that's what you want to do? Is that, that seems risky. And, for me, it was like the biggest risk for me is just not taking this opportunity, and not doing the work, to create something that I think will be really helpful to and impactful for a lot of people. And luckily that's where we landed.
So it's 2 years now that you've been open.
No, so we actually opened in 2024. I started the process in
Gotcha. Yeah.
2023.
Okay.
We opened February 26th of this year. So it does feel like 2 years. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It feels like it's been a couple years, and we're coming up on 8 months. But even when I talk to my staff, they're like, I can't believe we haven't even been open for 8 months, because it's been a lot of work, a lot of great times, I would say the majority of it has been amazing. And that just comes from like having really cool customers, really great community, and that support. But it's every week, every day, there's a little challenge, and so that makes the time feel like it's been a couple of years.
And also, as an outside observer, having just been to your shop once, I feel like there's places you could go where it feels really new. Um,
Mm.
And I don't think it felt that. I think it felt comfortable, and I feel like that's why you told me how long you've been open. I kind of forgot because it feels comfortable, nestled in the community, in a place where, of course, if there was going to be an oasis kind of coffee shop in this neighborhood, then it would be in this building, and it would look like this and be this size.
Mhm.
So I think you've done fantastic.
I appreciate that. That place where we put Sunbeam had been very like vacant. It was kind
Mm.
of like a little bit, it's kind of like a little strip, a little retail strip, not a not a mall or anything, but just in a neighborhood, a little retail
Yeah.
strip. We have on the corner, we have a dive bar. Then we have a printing company, and we have a barber shop. And then at the end, there was no anchor. It was just a vacant
Mm.
area with and so establishing ourselves during that time, and people really watched the process. They would leave like when they realized that, when I put a coming soon sign out there, I'd get post-its and say we're so excited. I'd get messages once we start sharing our social media and our email and stuff like that. And people were really excited. And we had this crazy thing is that I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but it's like this, or the show, but it's like they go in and they fix your house up. They send you away for the weekend.
Oh,
They fix
sure.
your house
Yeah.
up, and then at the end they're like, move that bus, and then like there's this beautiful new house in front. Well, we had like a dumpster out on the street, like in front, this orange dumpster. And when that dumpster moved, people knew like this is really happening. The dumpster moved like 2 days before we opened, so it felt like that
Nice.
moment, like move that dumpster,
Move
and
that time. That's
yeah,
so funny.
yeah. So I mean, and I don't think people really knew what to expect. I mean, I think when they walked in and they saw like the bright lights, they're like, "Wow, this is really bright for a coffee shop." And they see like the bright artwork. They're like, "Wow, this is really different. I'm not used to seeing this in the coffee shop." And then we have our signature sun bar, which has light therapy there,
Mm-hmm.
and and then they look so different. I mean, our sad lamps look like they're from the future or something like that. So people are like,
Yeah.
"Wow, this is a really cool reading lamp. What is
That's
this?"
what I thought. You had to educate me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, we live in Minnesota, and it gets really cold. It gets really dark. And we can have like up to 2 weeks without seeing the sun. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just, and it can get you down. I know a lot of people who've moved from Minnesota because they're like, I just can't deal with the cold and the dark, for these extended periods of time. And so for
Yeah.
me, knowing that I also deal with this, and at home I have light therapy, at home I drink my coffee, at home I listen to music that increases my vibration and changes my mood. I'm like, I need to share this with everyone, and that's really what we're doing. And people walk in, and I like to say like, it's hard to compete with the sun. So when it's a beautiful summer day, it's great. Come in and get a great cup of coffee. Come in and meet myself and our great staff who really go out of their way to like get to know you and give you like a great experience. But in those winter months, it's needed,
Yeah.
and you realize like what this really is, because it's like walking into a warm sunny day
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of winter. And and we have the mural in the back that looks like you're like looking at Costa Rica, which is really
Nice.
great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's we're here to get you through. We're here to get you on your way to a great day. We're here to like start that first smile that's hopefully contagious, that you go out and share with other people. And so that's just really what we're about, is just kind of giving people an opportunity to have their best day, to have a great experience. And it's tough. It's tough sometimes, but if you can stop somewhere and that's going to be positive in there, you're going to have a really great experience. It really changes the trajectory of your day.
I mean, y'all do this well. And I would also say that everyone listening, operating a coffee shop, this is the kind of thing that every coffee shop could benefit from. This is the thing that people want when they come in to a place. From either it could be 90 and sunny,
Hmm.
and you yourself could be just feeling like you're in winter
Right.
and overcast, and it
Hmm.
still is going to be that sunlight, that brightness, that positivity. So it's always in season, always appropriate. um, you were you spoke a couple of times at Coffee Fest, and I'm curious if you would share with us. Some of us weren't able to go to the show. um, what are some of the most what are some of the messages that you shared during your talks that you feel are the most important, that you're kind of really excited that you got to share with the people listening at the show?
Yeah. So I was going to do two. I ended up doing one. The one that I ended up doing was diversity in coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I shared a panel with a woman-owned coffee shop in St. Paul, Minnesota, Flava Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
Ian from Dead Stock Coffee in Portland,
Right.
and Black and Bold Coffee. And I think they're out of Iowa, and so one half of that ownership. And it
Right.
was, it was, to be honest, like it was weird because they put us a little bit around the corner and down the hall a little bit. And they said that was because of like what happened with George Floyd, and like they wanted people to be able to be honest, and those type of things, and which is fine. We had great attendance in there, and the people that were there, I feel like were like deeply impacted, and really, I mean, we had a great panel. I'm taking myself out of the equation. I enjoyed the panel and listening to what the other panelists had to say. But there was, as a minority business owner, you face specific challenges. You have different expectations, and your level of quality sometimes has to be higher, because sometimes people might come in with a little bit more scrutiny of how you do things until they get comfortable with the way you do things, and they experience your service. So there was, just listening to some of those challenges, that because it is extremely challenging without extra stuff to
Yeah.
start a
Yeah.
brick and mortar coffee shop. And so to have the extra challenges and having the people like really kind of understand what that is like was super impactful. I mean, one of the things that I discussed is like I might, be sitting, or I'm never sitting at the coffee shop, but I may be behind the bar with one of my uh, white baristas, and someone will come in, completely ignore me, and start discussing what a great place my barista has and how amazing this place
Mm.
is, and saying like, there's no way that this belongs to this guy. He's got to be the staff, and you must be the owner. And so then they'll ask, or my baristas might interrupt and like, no, this is Fred's establishment, and they're like, oh, okay, that's really nice. And then they'll go back and talk to my barista again, and so it's like, so some of those little nuances and intricacies are something that, for me, I'm really happy someone's enjoying the place. I'm hoping that they get a chance to learn something. I'm not really that doesn't bother me. But it is something that I wanted to share because I feel like, I feel like everybody in the panel had experienced that, and also some of the participants had experienced that too.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the beautiful things was that, there in South Dakota, there's a coffee shop, a Native American owned coffee shop called Grindhouse, and they're doing amazing work over there. But they were saying like how hard it's been establishing themselves as a Native American coffee shop, and some of the hate that they get sometimes is from their own community, and just trying to, and I understand that, because it's like, you have the audacity to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and just giving, and the extra scrutiny that comes along with that. And I think them listening to the panel and knowing that they're not alone in the challenges, but also the beautiful things that comes from overcoming those challenges, that they are part of a bigger community and a part of a bigger coffee community that will support them and care for them and help them along their journey. I think that was probably one of the most beautiful things that I experienced, just talking to them after. And then the day after Coffee Fest, they stopped in the Sunbeam, which was amazing. I was like, "Hey guys," and they're getting ready to hit the roads. They stopped in for some breakfast burritos and some drinks and like got some merch, and it was just like the support that they gave let me know that not only am I offering them a greater community, I mean they are embracing me as well, which is just like it's beautiful.
That's awesome. Wow. I I want to ask as a follow up to all of that, having community that supports and says you're not alone, so key. Having support like that.
Hmm.
Then there's like you're back in your shop. You're out there on your own, still needing to deal with the normal and the extraordinary or outside of the ordinary pressures.
Sure.
So, what is it that you would say is the strategy or tactic or approach that helps you live above all of that?
I think just staying true to our mission, and it's something that I shared as well. If you really have good intentions on what you're doing, and you have paved a road for yourself, and you know exactly where you want to go, it's super easy just to stay on that road. And it's not to say that you don't listen to any of those outside factors that might pull you off your path, but just knowing that you've created this establishment, you know what your mission is, and people will always have opinions about what you're doing, but they are not the experts on what you're trying to do. So giving anyone the power to redirect your vision or redirect your mission is too much power for anyone that has not invested the time and the effort and what you're trying to do to have. It's too much power. So I would say to anybody, like, if you know that what you're doing is for the greater good and is really to serve the community, stay focused, because there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be people who are going to redirect you, but they are not the experts at what you're trying to do. You are.
Mm, yeah, for what you're doing and for what a lot of operators would think of themselves as is you're stewarding something that's not even just yours anymore. Now that it's a community thing.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a train that, I mean, it can't be stopped. You can't. It's going full speed ahead, and whether you like it or not. And and that's also like a really great thing when you realize, like, you've become a part of what you've created. You're not the whole. You are just a piece of what you've created, because it has taken on a life of its own, and people have embraced it, and people have worked this into their schedule, into their life, and they depend on what you're offering and the services that you offer.
Yeah.
It helps you realize, like, how important it is what you're doing, but also, like, your business has grown to a point where um, it's bigger than just you.
Well said. Yeah. Fred, this is such a great conversation. And I love that we got to present this story to the audience. And I'm grateful that we could just jump on this call. So thank you for being here. How can we learn more about Sunbeam and just get plugged in on socials and website and all that?
Sure, sure. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Big fan of your podcast. I really appreciate you. Like, you have like really insightful things that you share, and it was really needed, like, during the process of my build out and establishing systems in my coffee shop. So thank you for that, first of all. So you can find us on Instagram. That's where we're most active and very interactive at Sunbeam Coffee MN. And if you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can hit us at sunbeamcoffeemn@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, keep on the great work, Fred. I appreciate you. And thanks again for being here.
You as well, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Well, of course, I'm really, I just want to say thank you to Frederick for joining us on the show. And if you're interested in more information about Sunbeam Coffee, go to Sunbeam Coffee MN on Instagram. So at Sunbeam Coffee MN for Minnesota on Instagram. And you can find all you need to know about that company and what they're up to. And of course, you should visit their shop. It's really a cool space. It's a little oasis of coffee and good vibes and cool murals. So again, big thank you to Frederick for joining us on the show. If you have questions, comments, or feedback about Keys to the Shop, about this episode or anything else, just send them to chris@keystotheshop.com and we'll have a conversation. We'll talk all about stuff that's on your mind. If you just want to say, hey, hi, Chris, we listened to the show, and you just have a conversation. I like doing that too. So it's chris@keystotheshop.com. And don't forget, go to coffeefest.com and check out these upcoming shows in 2025. Get signed up. You and your team are going to have a great time there. And I hope to see you at coffeefest, coffeefest.com. And with that, that's the end of the show. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today and listening. I appreciate you all. Don't forget to subscribe, share the episodes with your friends and family and coworkers. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.